So if you're watching this video, you probably just finished the lesson on finding linear equations from patterns. And we're going to talk about something specific regarding those linear equations, and that is the slope or the rate of change. And I'm hoping this is not a new subject for you guys. You've probably seen it before. Rate of change. And we're going to define that as the change in y over the change in x. That triangle symbol, that just means, you'll see it later in mathematics, but it just means change in. It's just a way to write it without having to write out the words, okay? So we got to figure out what is the change in y over the change in x in this scenario. We have the number of fans in a stadium and then the number of minutes that pass by. So we're filling up a stadium. That's our scenario. Okay, so first of all, we have our changes in y. The change from 472 to 524 is 52. And then the change from 524 to 550 is 26. You can put these in your calculator. I'm just subtracting. And then from 550 to 654 is 104. Okay, those are our changes in y for this table. Our changes in x from 3 to 5, well, that's 2. Don't need a calculator for that one. Change from 5 to 6, that's just 1. And our change from 6 to 10 is 4. So let's look at that and see if we can figure out what the slope is. We know that if we look at this first pair of change in y over change in x, we can write the slope as 52 over 2. Well, if you reduce that fraction, guess what you're going to get? You're going to get 26 over 1, which is our second ratio of change in y over change in x. And then if we do the third one, 104 over 4, if you reduce that fraction, you are also going to get 26 over 1. So we can say here that our slope or our rate of change is 26. Or you can say 26 over 1 if it helps you to keep that straight. It's always a ratio. It's always change in y over change in x. So that's fine. You can put the 1 there. But what this represents, it's not just numbers, but what this represents is that for every minute that passes, 26 more people enter the stadium. So the change in fans is 26 for every minute that passes by. So now we're going to look at finding slope from a graph. And I'll write this back up here. Remember, slope, we said, is always going to be change in y over change in x. So to find, these are exactly the same graph, guys. It's just twice. We just have some extra detail on the one on the right. So we're talking about the time in weeks versus the amount owed on something. Maybe you bought a car, and we're seeing the amount owed decrease as time goes by. So the way we find the slope from a graph is we choose 2 points. So I'm going to choose these 2 points here. I'm going to choose a point 212, and then I'm going to choose another point here, 5.3. You can choose your own points. You don't have to choose those in particular. It's good to choose points that are directly on a line where the two hashtags cross, because then you can see what the point is very clearly. That's all. But 212 and 5.3 are going to work. We can use the slope formula that we're going to talk more about later. But also we can just look at the graph to figure out what the slope is. So we started at this point, and we started at this point, and we need to see what the change in y is, because this is the y-axis, this is the x-axis. So the change in y, if we go from this point, and we're going down this way, we're changing in the negative direction. So we change 9. Our change in y is 9. And we're going to put that over our change in x, which goes in the positive direction, 3. So that's the way you find slope from a graph, guys. It's pretty easy, right? Negative 9 over 3. The slope is negative because that amount you owe is decreasing. That's the way it's supposed to work, right? You're making payments. And we can reduce that also to negative 3 over 1. So just like in the last example, we can write slope equals, you can either write just negative 3 or you can write negative 3 over 1. But as usual, the most important thing is that we understand what this slope means. And it means that for every 3 weeks that pass, someone owes $9 less. So for each 1 week, remember how we reduced the fraction? Someone owes $3 less because 9 over 3 equals 3 over 1. All right, so I want everybody now to try in the next few problems. I think there's 9 problems that follow. Try to find the slope from the table and from the graph. And then after that, you're going to have an exercise where you put those slopes in order.